I'll do a better job of remembering. So we're recording, I believe now we are live on Facebook. Hello out there, Facebook. Just so you guys know, on Facebook, I can't actually see your comments until later, but we will get back to you. You can watch from there. This will be available on YouTube as well as we kind of get started. I am going to build in some review in case you were not here yesterday. And of course, thanks, Jen, for keeping an eye on the people that are kind of popping in the room as we get started. So you can see Krista in there. One of the ways, again, I said it, if you're looking for help or if you're having trouble with Zoom or any questions or comments, I know a lot of you know a lot of the other people in here, but if you see the MBQ in front of the name, you can find the chat. You could send anybody a private message, maybe not suggesting a private message to me unless it's a question on something I'm doing. But I know that Krista or Jen or Paul out there with MBQ in front of them will be able to. Thank you, Jen, for typing that in there. There's the good stuff. Again, the chat is great. Use the chat. I love, again, seeing your smiling faces and seeing your cameras on. I understand that not everybody does want their camera on, and that's totally okay by me. We've got a few more people coming in here. So with that, again, we're going to kind of get started. So this is, again, our parent engagement series. And this is creative communications, right, which we talked about yesterday. This is all the C's. We have consistency, condensity, clarity, and coverage. All right, don't worry, you don't need to remember all of those things. All right, but here's my question for you. Those of you that were here yesterday, let's put our minds back in that Zoom space that we were at. Hopefully it's not too many Zoom spaces. It's just maybe one Zoom space. And I want you to think about maybe what one of your takeaways are from yesterday before I even give you any visual clues. You don't need to say anything. Just think about takeaway. If you want to type something, great. So what do you think? What was the big takeaway from yesterday? Awesome. You like the postcards. Yeah, isn't it funny that sometimes the tools that are the least digital are the ones that are the biggest takeaway? Yeah, those postcards were great. Different methods to communicate. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, the postcards. The classroom Facebook page. Thanks, Amy. And again, getting the parents' phones, right? Get into the parents' phones, whether that's Facebook, or it's postcards, Instagram. You kind of know your parents, right? Don't overwhelm parents. That's definitely a really good one, right? Use YouTube, get into their phones. How can we use things that parents are already comfortable with, right? That they're already using, removing those excuses. Great, right? Can't wait to buy the postcards and your new favorite term, right? We might need to, that might have to be a new sticker where we get the nail polish remover and we need to be like remover of excuses. So anybody who wants to work on that sticker, feel free that we can jump in there. So again, this is me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on there. Those of you that know, most of you that are in here kind of already know a little bit about me. Again, my wonderful Kinder Rocket students that even today, I still kind of get some work from there in Seesaw. But if you weren't here yesterday, or if you're watching out there, hello, Facebook, by the way, you're seeing this session on Facebook. If you're watching on Facebook, we have a whole nother about 44 people that are live with us here that are waving and smiling at you with their hearts. Again, this is me, this is my family, and this is what we're doing, right? As I whip back my like fancy background here, which is not virtual, right? It brings us honestly to the reality of our remote teaching, right? Whether we're teaching at home, in our closet, or if we have an awesome she shed in our backyard or next to us, right? Or maybe we got the perfect office space. Wherever you are, you just make it work. The work, not worse, you make it work. And it goes back to this whole idea that we have just become such a mobile society, right? With our cell phones, we are so mobile. And it's to this question, right? How are we changing our communication to match the changing times? How are we mobile teachers, right? Because literally, I mean, did you ever think about this? If you have Wi-Fi and you have your phone, you could literally teach from anywhere. Right? Not that it wouldn't be hard. You could go to the middle of Yosemite and you could say, hey, students, I can connect. And in fact, right, there's programs like the Ports program, which you can Zoom a park ranger and you can get into a Zoom and you can watch the park ranger like live in a butterfly garden. That's the Ports program. And if I could have one of my awesome MBQ people, if you want to drop that in there, that'd be great. So day one, and again, there's going to be a little review. We talked about creative communications. Day two, we're going to talk about consistency and condensity. Consistency and condensity. And yes, condensity is a real word, as you mentioned yesterday. I looked it up. And then we have clarity and coverage. All right, so I'm going to go out of here because I always have trouble with this slide show because it's like, well, do I rearrange it on the different days? Do I move day 2 up when I should? I don't know. So maybe someday I'll get the answer to these questions. All right, so this is day 2, consistency and condensing. And a lot of this, and of course, I think I already removed my review here. Sorry, I'm going to go back. I apologize. So here's my review. As I said, I'm still playing around with how to organize. So if we go back to day 1 was really about with creative communications. This whole idea, somebody said, getting into the idea of cell phone, right? And if we look at stats, right, most Americans have a cell phone, most Americans have a smartphone, and most Americans use Facebook and YouTube. Summary of yesterday, right? A lot of it was really thinking about we are not always used to communicating with parents via YouTube or via Facebook, right? It was a little uncomfortable for me in the beginning. If you would have asked me a year ago if I would have a class Facebook page, you know what I would say? No way, right? But times change. How are we changing with them? Now, day 2, and that's pretty much my day 1 review, right? Day 2, we're going to go back up to the slides, and I apologize for jumping around here. As I said, this is a work in progress here. Day 2 goes to this big idea, right? It's the consistency and the condensity. Consistency and condensity. It goes to back. How often should I communicate with families? Are you ready for the right answer? Are you ready for the $1 million answer for your $1 million question? There is no right answer. Right? You have to know your parents. You have to think about your situation. For example, as a kindergarten teacher, my parents are probably going to expect a little bit more communication from me, right? But if I go up to high school, now all of a sudden I have a student that has 7 different teachers. How am I packaging that and to not overwhelm it with 7 different messages from 7 different teachers? Some of it is the way we have to think about. We have to think about ways we can collaborate, ways we can work together, right? How often should I communicate with families? Well, it depends. And part of the way we can really fix this is also by having some different routes of communications like you saw. So it brings us to this problem, right? I don't know. Again, not the right answer. It's like Goldilocks, right? When we think of Goldilocks, Goldilocks goes in, right? She sits down in dad's, and of course the porridge is too what? Too cold, right? And then she goes to the next seat, and of course the porridge is too hot. And finally, she gets to the baby bear's porridge, and it's just right. Well, the same thing is with parent communication. How do we get in this part where we're not getting enough? And parents are just like, what's going on? What is my child doing? What do I expect, right? On the other hand, maybe it's too much where it's like, here's this activity and here's this activity and go to this link. And I get that we're just trying to support, but we have to think about that. Now, I was definitely guilty with that in the beginning, right? I think a lot of us were because we were just trying to figure it out. We were just trying to communicate with our parents, right? If I had to choose, I'd probably rather lean to the side of too much than too little, right? Isn't it better, I think, to have a little too much than parents just to be like, what's going on? So you really have to kind of feel it out with your parents. Sometimes it could be you send home a Google survey, right? A Google form, you could send it home with parents. Or it could just be an informal, like emoji survey. Check it out. Hey, parents, let me respond with a thumbs up if you think the amount of text messages are great, a thumbs down if they're not. Isn't that a pretty easy response from families? Just like a simple emoji with a thumbs up, thumbs down, maybe thumb in the middle. Like just quick emoji checks in. I saw a teacher sent home like a check, like send me emoji back with how your child's feeling about school. That brief response can tell you so much. It's a lot less, an emoji response, isn't it more doable than, let me tell you how my child is doing at school. I'm going to write like a 5-paragraph essay and have to set it as 5 different text messages because that's how I'm feeling. But it still gives parents a chance to check in. Anyways, just wondering about reciprocal information, getting information from families as educators. Yes, it's definitely a 2-way street. And so we'll kind of talk about that as well. And this goes back to how often should you communicate with families, right? There is no right answer. You got to figure out what works for you, and you got to feel your families out a little bit. Some families are going to want more communication. Some families are going to want less communication. Are you ever going to be able to get it right? Guess what the answer is? Not 100%. Right? I don't know if we could ever be a teacher that reached 100%, right? That would be the teacher that would be, you know, just like the golden teacher if we could reach 100%, but we don't. And we got to be okay with that, right? Realistic. All right. So I want to talk to you a little bit about my schedule, which I developed over time. Now, again, I felt I had certain check-in points for parents. And I got to a systematic schedule. And some of this, again, depends on your situation. okay? Here's what I think of. I always think to myself, less is more. My question is, do I need to send this out right now? Right? Because a lot of times I feel like when we have this this whole like when we respond to fires, right? Oh my God, goodness, there's an assembly tomorrow. I need to send that out right now. Oh my goodness, like right now, you know, it's that whole idea of you get a piece of information, you need to send it out right away, right? Sometimes I get that happens and we can't plan around it. But sometimes we don't need to send out the information right now. And so one of the things we're going to talk about is like bundling information. How can we bundle information together? All right. So here was my schedule, right? And I got this pretty consistent for the most part. At 8:05, via Remind, which is if you're not with Remind, it's a kind of a text message app, right? Where parents and teachers can message back and forth. You don't need to exchange phone numbers. Again, put any messaging app that you're using in here. Class Dojo, Blackboard Communicate, right? Parent Square. 8:05, I would schedule this announcement the night before, and they would get a Remind message with a few things. Number one, their daily agenda. Number two, a link to their morning message. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in a second. Okay. Rather than having to send it out as multiple things, I think about how can I condense it, right? And how can I be consistent? Now at 7:30-ish, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because that's when we taught last week, I would send out a daily progress report of students. And I'll show you again what these looks like. It was a Google form. Now, again, I'm a kindergarten teacher. You might not necessarily feel the need to update your parents daily, right? At some point, I'll kind of show you what these daily updates look like. They had a few different ways. Then, if I really needed to send a message during the day, I would send a message during the day. For example, I might send a message, oh, just a reminder, our class is not meeting today at 1. We have to meet at 12 today. That would be a message that would go out in the morning, and that would probably go out again in the middle of the day if I'm changing my schedule. But here's my point. You need to have a consistent knowing a schedule, you know, right? Let's go back. Like when the newspaper used to be delivered, can we imagine that? Even if we never had a newspaper delivered, hopefully we can imagine a kid riding a bike or driving a car and throwing the newspaper out. What would happen if your newspaper was delivered sometimes in the morning and sometimes in the evening, and you just never knew when your newspaper was going to be delivered? Would you subscribe to that company? Probably not, right? Or even the news. Like I turn on the news, I can rely on every morning, the news is going to be on at the same time, right? I know when I'm going to get my information. And what does that do for me as a person? Or if I'm getting the messages the same time in a consistent way as a parent? Then I can start to feel less anxiety because I know, right? Why do we, especially us primary teachers, why do we teach our kids routines? Why do we use some of these same things we do over and over, right? Consistency, right? We build that in. We build it in for our kids, right? Okay, here's what I want you to do. When you come in the classroom, you open your book, you can start reading. These are routines. Kids feel safer and are less anxious, in my opinion, when they have that structure and routines. It's the same thing for families. Give them structure and give them routine and try to stick to it as much as you can. Does it have to be on a daily basis? No. Maybe you send it out on a weekly basis. Maybe you send it out 3 times a week, but let people know what your schedule is. All right. Now, what does this look like? Here's the other thing. Like whenever I think about what I would do digitally, you know what I first think about? Well, what do I do in the classroom? And I was the type, even when I was a kindergarten and a 6th grade teacher, I had a folder, and in the folder, it would be like things to go home, things to return to school. And guess how often I would try to send that folder home? Once a week, right? So if my flyers could wait to send out, I would stick them in the folder and I would send it home on the same day every week. Why? Because parents would know that the folder was in there. What happens to flyers that get stuck in backpacks? Exactly, right, Miss Tosi. They get lost. They disappear into the backpack flyer vortex. It's a thing at every grade level, right? But if we have that consistency, it's the same thing. Okay, so in my classroom, I had a consistent schedule with my folder. So look at your schedule with the things you do in the classroom, right? How can you replicate that outside of the classroom? If you have a parent communication inside the classroom in a certain way, try to structure it, right? The backpack graveyard, exactly where papers go to die. If parents know there's a folder and they know to check for the folder or the planner, whatever you use, like some of you use the planner to communicate, and some of you had a consistent schedule and you did it daily and you had the parents sign it daily, or maybe they just needed to sign it once a week. Think about your schedule that you did as far as parent communication. Maybe as a high school teacher, you didn't communicate that much with parents. That's going to have to change a little bit more, right? So let me tell you a little bit about what my morning went out, and I'll show you where this is. This is an example of every morning. This is what I would send, and this is just a simple Google slide, and I'll show you this. And it was almost the same thing. Every morning, you notice one side's in English, other side's in Spanish. Same thing. If you look at these, you'll see like the same thing every time, right? Watch the morning message. In this class, you can see a typo. This is the time where I only had one class a week. Usually I would have two, but we switched it. That's why I highlighted it, and you could see this is that I did this because there's a typo there. And then I put the seesaw activities. What are the seesaw activities? What do you need to do? How many activities do you need to do? What's the daily schedule? But one of the things I noticed is I never wanted to limit people, right? I never wanted to limit people. I would rather give them a good base and then some enrichment activities. So what were my enrichment activities? Practice your sight words, right? There's a Facebook Live. Read books daily. I don't like saying honestly 20 minutes because sometimes 20 minutes is even too much, right? What if it depends how long the book is. So if for me, you read books daily, you're doing awesome. Maybe some of the older kids, we want to put more time limits on them, but that's for me with the kindergartners. And so I would send this home every single day, but I also sent it home with my morning message, and my morning message was a YouTube video, and it was in one message. My goal was to try to put everything in one message, even English and Spanish. It's like it would say, good morning, here's the daily message. And then it would say it in Spanish. And then there would be a link to a YouTube video. And then there would be the picture of the Google slide. Why? That's a lot of information, but how many messages did I send out? Just one message. Could I have sent that out in 3 different messages? Yes, but that means I got to scroll up on my phone, and then we start to have a lot of messages to deal with. And then what happens to people? You got it. They start to get overwhelmed, right? And so I just did this on a daily schedule. Now, here's the cool thing I want to show you. Some of this is starting to think about how we're getting our work out there, how we can, I guess, overlap, cross post, whatever you want to call it. So this is a Google site, and Paul's going to be doing a training on Google Sites if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. This is my Google site. Now check this out. Guess what I have on my Google site? You're never going to guess. You're never going to get it. Nope, never going to get it. Does that look familiar? Because you know what this is? It's a Google slideshow, right? And in this Google slideshow, I embedded it in my Google site. Now, why is that? So why does it make it so easy? I'm thinking about, because that's again, if parents for some reason don't check their that's the excuse remover, right? If for some reason they don't check their message, they can go to the site. And here it is. Here it is, just all of these. These are just all a Google slide. And so here was Wednesday, here was Tuesday, Monday, Thursday, Wednesday, and it was, you guys see there's a pattern to these? So it made it really simple for me. Watch what I did. I'll even do it right now. So let's say, what's today? It's Tuesday. Let's say I needed to grab Wednesday. So I would come here, I'd copy my Wednesday slide, I'd go to the beginning of my presentations, and then what do I need to do? Just paste it, right? Because I didn't want to have to look up the words in Spanish and English. So I could put Wednesday, and then I could just type in here, July, and then 21st. Right? And then I would have to look up Julio, right? Is that right? Am I saying? I always have to double check. It's just like that. Is that right? My Spanish helpers, did I do that right? Yeah. Okay, so then I'd do this. So then I'd come here. Maybe I need to change the week to week whatever, 111. I don't even know what week it would be now. Week 21, right? I just changed the names of my seesaw activities. Right, I changed the name, and this is some of the formatting that sometimes would get me off, but I'll just delete that for now. I changed the name of some of my seesaw activities. I copied them in Spanish. Do you see it? It's not taking me a whole lot of time, right, to update this template once I had it. Then all I needed to do was go to File, and I could download it, right? It's downloaded. I file download it. Now, if I go back to my web page and I do my web page, and I'm gonna have to delete this, guess what's now on my web page here? See what it says here? July 21st. Did I have to update any of my web page? No. And I know some of you are like, how did he do that? It's magic. There's a little few things. So again, Paul has this session, and maybe Paul, if there's still room in your session, you could put that in there. There was a question, but it's in the Google slide, and whatever the first slide on my whatever the first is whatever the first slide is on my Google slide deck is going to show up on my web page. Right? So how cool is that? It's just, I didn't have to do a whole lot of extra. I just built it to be able to automatically have this in a few different places. Right? And once I have my template, it's not a whole lot of extra work, right? It's just Command C, Command V, right? How can we build these things to make it easier for ourselves, right? So then the parents could see it in their remind message, and they also got a morning message. And just so you know, what does my morning message look like? Well, I showed you some of this yesterday, and I have a few that I need to add here, but the daily message, guess where the daily message is also here? It's also here on my webpage. It's also in a few different places, but this would be like a YouTube link. These are in my drive, but these are just the morning messages. It was basically me putting my phone up, actually having my daughter, who shout out to some of her former teachers in here, right? My daughter, or I forget, anyways, son, daughter, I forget who was whose teachers. I apologize. Anyways, they would see this, and so they get it. How many messages would they get? Just one in the morning. How many messages would they get in the evening? And so some of you might ask, well, what does his tracker look like? What did my tracker look like? I got some mixed reviews on this. And so I had a few different ways. One of the things that I did is I would have my star students. Okay? And do you see all the students there with all the masks on them? Can you see that? So I would start to, and these were students that I did it one for the week. This is the weekly, and guess, this is a Google slideshow, so it automatically is doing this. This was Tuesday star students for this day. You can see some days I had more, some days I had less. And so some people say, like, I tried to do something like this, but I got pushback from parents. Well, you know what? I'm going to honor the kids that are working hard. If I'm going to support every kid and go out of my way to call all those parents and provide all these awesome activities, and if I'm doing my best to reach those parents, hopefully I'm not going to get, but if they did that, for me, I didn't get any pushback. But if they did, I'd say, you know what, how can I support your student? And I think because my parents saw how hard I was trying, right, it's just another way for me to honor your students. Do you have to do this? No. And so I actually sent this home to my parents without the masks on, right? They get the version without the mask on. And again, it's just a Google slide. So once I built it in Google Slide, it was very easy. Again, it's consistency. But wait, there's more, and that's because if those of you that know me, I usually go over the top, and I usually do too much, and so I apologize. With the things that I'm showing you, don't feel like you have to do all of them. Feel like you can do some of them. Here's the last piece. Here's another piece, and Laura Carey, who's not here, she's going to do a piece on this a little bit. This is a tracking form that I made for myself and, again, for parents, because I'm removing excuses as much as I can. Now, I decided, and you have to decide what you're okay with. I use students' initials. If you want to use a secret code, but pretty much I just put in here checks if they did the assignment, X's if they didn't. And if you can look at my results, this is the last week of school, and of course the last day of school. Overall, the week was my least done. But usually, again, 21 to 24 kids completed all their assignments, right? And that's in part, this is a spreadsheet that parents can see. Technically, I guess anybody could see it, but I don't know why you necessarily would be interested in it. But again, here's my point to this. Do you have to do all this stuff? No. But do parents want to know if their kids are completing work? Yes. Right? Maybe more importantly, they want to know if their kids aren't completing work. Because I don't know about you, some of you know my family and my first grader, he'd always tell me he would complete his work, but guess who had to always go check? Me. And my fourth grader, I'd still check on as well, but he was pretty good most of the time about completing his work, right? But as a parent, I always want to know that. Now, not everybody is as comfortable with going in Seesaw and checking their own child's work, right? But here's the point of this. You don't need to do all those fancy things. You just need to figure out a way to let parents know if their child is completing work. That's the takeaway from this section. Are you guys good with that? And I'm going to show you a lot of these things that I have. I have templates that you can just steal if you see anything you like, okay? So again, consistency and condensity. Now, remember how I told you I don't want to just like give them information, just the bare information? Well, this is where I was able to use Facebook and YouTube a little more. Because do you think I really worried about the amount of messages I put out on Facebook for parents? No, because it was like a bonus, right? And so for the things, again, on my Facebook, every morning I schedule my morning message. Remember the little YouTube video I talked about with the calendar in there? So I uploaded it to YouTube, I'm able to share it to my Facebook page. I'm able to share it, remind to my parents, and I'm giving, and I actually put it in Seesaw again. I definitely am a little crazy. But the fact that I have these pieces, and if it's YouTube, it doesn't have to live in YouTube. I can share it here to Facebook. It gives another place for people to access it, right? Then at lunch, I know some of you enjoyed these at lunch, a few of you, right? If you watch my Kinder Rockets, I would do things like think about what would I do in the classroom? Well, I don't know about you. I always love doing my butterfly kits, and I haven't been teaching Kinder for that long, so I've only done it for a few years. I wish now I would have done it with my sixth graders. Well, we did a butterflies, and so how can I give my kids that experience of being in the classroom? Remember yesterday I talked about Facebook is like the public front of my classroom. Well, literally, I took an iPad and I did a live stream of butterflies. I did a live stream of caterpillars. I did a live stream of just ants, right? Now, one thing you need to be aware of is you just can't play any music in those live streams, right? You can't just go to Pandora and play music. There's actually sites you can go to be able to stream music over Facebook. Just an FYI if you ever do that. And then 7 o'clock, what would I do at 7 o'clock? Every night, we're on day, I think, 129, 130 here, is we did our Facebook read aloud. Again, even on Facebook, there was consistency and condensity. Do you have to post all of that information everywhere? No, you don't. And honestly, when the new year comes, I'm going to rethink about that because it was a lot and it was too much. But here's my point. You need to be able to offer information in different areas. Okay? It can't all be coming from once, and it has to be consistent in the information that you're putting out. So you can see, again, just a few examples. On the left, here's an example of a read aloud, right? And on the right, you can see some ants marching. And those videos are still available, right? Was it really a whole lot more of me to just put a phone up in front of my ants and hit the live stream button? No. And if you remember me saying yesterday, people are 4 times as likely to watch a live video than they are to watch a pre-recorded video. With that being said, a pre-recorded video is better than no video, right? Okay. Also, again, I don't worry about the badge anxiety. I don't worry about the 4 notifications in Parent Square or in Remind I'm sending people. I can just post it to Facebook and they're already getting badges. In fact, they're probably getting more badges from other friends and other things than they're getting from me. Would you guys agree with that? So again, I'm not worried about the content I'm posting there. But again, I'm posting how? Consistently, right? And I'm trying to take my information, like with my homework folder where I put all the flyers in, I'm trying to condense it as much as I can. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay. And I'm just going to if you have questions, I'm going to let you guys give a process to do the process time before I just kind of keep moving. How are you feeling? Again, these sessions, they have a lot of information in them, right? But I want you to really start thinking, and hopefully some of the other sessions you're going to be attending, if you're going to any of the other ones at the Parent Mini Engagement Series, they're going to hopefully show you how to build some of these skills as well. So thank you, Wendy. I can see that you enjoy the spreadsheet. Again, I'll show you where that lives in a second. So just again, you don't even need to say anything. I'm just going to pause and let you think. Yes, I did post my spreadsheet to my Google site, and I would also share it with parents. Yes, thank you, Jessica. Great question. Again, do I need to necessarily send even messages out daily to parents? Maybe I just want to send all my weekly agenda out. Maybe I send it out on Sunday, right? And then every Sunday they can get their weekly agenda from me. I was building a lot of activities and I wasn't prepared enough to build those all a week ahead. Usually I'd build my activities the day before or 2 days before, right? Because I had to change a lot of them. So I wasn't at that point. You can import info from Google. Yes, you can import. Can you import the classroom into a Google spreadsheet? Yes, you can just simply, the gradebook works pretty well that way. The new gradebook features I'm still learning. I don't use those tools as much, but I know it's getting slicker and slicker in the way that it shares information to gradebook. So they're always making some good improvements. All right, so again, what's my message? Be consistent with what you're sending out. Is there a right formula? Do you have to send it out twice a day? No. Do you have to send it out every day? No. But you want people to feel like they know, like, a few things. What's going on, right? What's going on, and how do I know if my kids are doing this? So here's a question from Lindsay. Are there platforms that can be used without internet? So the platforms that can be used, and I don't know, Lindsay, if you're maybe here maybe you weren't here in the last time. So, but we shared some postcards. That's a platform. Mail is a platform. But one of the things, again, looking at the data, right? You'd be surprised. In a smartphone, right? 81% of Americans have a smartphone. 81% of Americans, like 73%, have Facebook. 73% have YouTube. 69% have Facebook, right? And so we got to start thinking about maybe the platforms that they can have and how are we maybe supplementing those. It should be our job as districts now and under the governors, right? Kids don't have internet access. We got to give them internet access. We got to remove those excuses, right? I know pretty much everybody here in my area, everybody brought hotspots out and send them home on some level, right? So again, it's more we can remove those excuses. All right, you guys ready to move forward a little bit? How we feeling? Thumbs up. Remember, only I can see you. Thumbs up. Thumbs in the middle. I'm okay. If you don't put your thumb up, I might assume that it's automatically a thumb down. Yeah, it's hard, Lindsay. There's some parents, honestly. I had one child and he lived in a very difficult situation. I won't go into it, but the only way I got a hold of that child is if I went to the house. And I just had to do it. And some of it was that he had 6 other kids in that house with him. And, Grandpa Joe, that may or may not have been his name. He was there watching him when I dropped the stuff off, right? Now, here's the good thing I will say about that child. I kept reaching out and I kept reaching out and I kept reaching out, but I didn't give up. And so with about 3 weeks left of school, who finally started showing up on a fairly regular basis to my Google Meets? That child. Right. And part of it is because, like, if parents know that you care and they're on your side, they're much more willing to support you. Now it's hard, right? It's hard. So, yeah. Could I do a read aloud and show pages from a book on Google Slides as I read? Yeah, you can, like, just right now, right? If I'm doing a read aloud, and you could do Epic if you want to, right? You could do Epic. I even made my own butterfly booklet in Google Slides, right? Anything you can do. Part of it is getting, like, I do my nightly read alouds on Facebook because we need to get literacy to our kids, right? I might not be the best way, right? There's some other way, but that's one way I can get literacy to my students, right? And not even mine. So a live video is great. You can do a live video on Facebook. It's very easy from your phone, right? I'm using Zoom right now to do through Facebook, but I don't even need to use that, right? I can just use my phone. I can, so there's just lots of different ways. We just got to be a little bit more creative. We also have to be a little bit more willing to put our faces out there. And I know that's hard for some of us, but I do find it interesting that some of us, like, we're very willing to post our faces on our Instagram pages, but maybe when it comes to making a video for our students, we're less willing. Now, there's people that don't post their faces to their Instagram account either, right? But we just need to think, right? Who is this for? And you got to think, my YouTube account, I can make it public, right? But my YouTube videos don't have to be public, do they? And one of the reasons why I actually like putting my videos on YouTube, because they're easier to find than when they're in my Google Drive. Anybody else have problems finding things in their Google Drive? That's one of the reasons I put my videos just on YouTube, even if you don't list them as public. It's a storage place for them. So again, thinking about the ways that you can group information, right? So you saw my daily agenda. I also use my morning messages to group information, right? A morning message. So in my morning message, I do things like, hey, we're going to talk a little bit about the day. And remember, you're going to meet with me at 10 or at 1. And remember, here's the people that earn their badges from the sight words, or here's this announcement. Remember, I'm going to be at school, right? And I would morning message again. How can I share information in multiple places? And finally, a shout out to Miss O'Halloran. She's a teacher in our district, but it could just be a simply weekly newsletter, right? Like some of us did weekly newsletters. That one was done in pages beforehand and sent it home. So hopefully, again, grouping my information. How can I group my information and plan ahead in sending it out? So I want to be proactive rather than reactive. So Erica, what kind of things do you have to support this? Tripod, document camera, selfie stick. So I brought my first tripod for about $25 on Amazon, and I can share that particular one. And I felt like it was pretty good. It was pretty sturdy. The cool thing about the tripod is it could function as a selfie stick. It could also just be a tripod, right? That's all. That's the minimum thing that you would need if you're using your phone. Like if you want to start looking at upscaling, there are some things that you can do. Honestly, the hardest thing to capture on the phone nowadays, because most of our phones have like rip roaring cameras. Like I didn't even buy a camera for doing my stuff. I just upgraded to my iPhone 11 Pro because I can shoot in 4K if I want to. Now nobody wants to see me in 4K though, because that would be like, that's the whole thing, right? But like all the blemishes, right? All the scars, all the wrinkles, right? But anyways, just like a selfie stick or just a tripod, right? You can do so much with just a tripod and your phone. I would say you could get one of those. And then if you want to worry about audio, right? If you want to just get like a lavalier mic, if you just look up lavalier microphone, you can get a longer one and you could get the adapter to plug it right to your phone and then you just put it here. That's like the simplest way to do that. And any of these questions that you have, literally, this is, people always ask me, what do you recommend? Well, here's what I usually recommend. I go to Amazon and I look at how many stars it has and I look at how much money it is. And then I see if I can get something cheaper. And one day it might be, I like this thing. And the next day, this thing. Yes, duct tape works great, right? Literally just duct taping it, right? Your kids, if you have kids at home, my daughter she helps me. Right now, I put her on the payroll. She's actually on my payroll as my social media ambassador, and she helps me with the read alouds, and she sets up the camera every night, and she's learning life skills like sending Zoom invites out to our guest readers. Okay, so it's like thinking about how can I share this information, right? So hopefully that helps. Yeah, just a selfie or tripod with your phone, and again, you can find them pretty inexpensive. You do want to make sure it is one that's a little sturdier. Like for example, I like the ones that can clip shut. There's ones that can kind of turn shut, and there's ones that will actually clip shut. Again, if you have any of these, maybe I'll post it in the comments on the Facebook. Yeah, that's a good one, Paul. Paul, is that iographer right there? Is that an iographer stand?
It's a Joby.
Yeah. So there's lots of difference, right? And there's lots of different price ports for a lot of the different ones. So this kind of brings us to a little bit of our closure. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I shared this kind of planning sheet. You don't actually need to use it if you don't want to, but when you start thinking about sending out your messages, these are the things that you need to think about. Like, what information do I have to share? Right? Is it going to be in a video format? Is it going to be in a PDF format? Is it going to be a picture? Right? When do I want to share the information? Make a schedule for yourself and make a schedule for parents. And the cool thing is, like, I sent my message out at 8:05, but I would schedule it. Most of the apps that we have, you can schedule a lot of those announcements, right? Even on Facebook, I can schedule my announcements. Even on YouTube, I can schedule my videos, right? Have a consistent schedule. And I think I have this in here. Let's see if this planner document is still here. I think Jen or Krista, if you wouldn't mind just posting that again, that would be super helpful. How often do you want to share information? Does it have to be twice a day like I did? No. I would really suggest if you're a kinder or a TK or a first grade teacher, you might want to send it out daily, right? Because I just feel like that's better for the younger kids. But if you start matriculating up the system, maybe you're okay with weekly, right? You send it out what's going to work for you. Here's the other things you could think about, for example. Okay, I'm on a 7th grade. I'm with the 7th grade. Maybe I could look at a 7th grade and we could do a Google site all together. And so rather than having individual Google sites, maybe all the parents could go to one Google site and we could just have different pages. It's again, this whole idea of maybe this one-stop shop, right? Now you notice I have a few different, but if you look at my Google site, that's like the one-stop shop for parents. They can get everything there, right? And that's just me, kindrockets.org, go here, go here, go here, right? And then finally, where do you want to share the information? I showed you a lot of different places that you can share it, right? Lots of different places that you can share the information. But we need to start thinking about these things when we're sharing it. Because again, how many of you, if you're a parent, you don't need to raise your hand, you don't need to say anything. How many of you with a child felt overwhelmed with your child's schedule at some point? Right? Probably even the parents that were in my class felt overwhelmed, I'm sure, right? Because it was overwhelming for all of us. And so how can we help support this, right? This whole idea of kids not completing it because, parents are getting tired, right? Maybe it's too much work. Maybe it's too little work. Maybe they can't find where to access it. Maybe they just don't know where to access it. It's always like, it's interesting because our job as teachers used to be just to teach, right? We'd get to our classroom, we'd start teaching at 8:15, we'd stop teaching at 2:40. We'd reach out to the parents as best we could, but now it's become so much more of this, right? And some of these things that we were doing before maybe it's like Jupyter grades. I had a few awesome teachers that you would use Jupyter grades. Maybe if you're just uploading your daily reports in there and parents could check it on their own, right? It's just providing these places. Again, here's my question that I'll ask you when you're thinking, how do I know as a parent, how do I know my kids have completed their activity? Does it have to be a daily basis? No. Does it even have to be on a weekly basis? No. But I would say at least a bi-weekly basis, right? Do you think that's reasonable? Right? And so how do I know what to do? Like these driving questions. How do I know what to do? How do my kids know what to do? Right? And how do I know that they've done it? I think if we can provide parents by being consistent, right? Again, why are we consistent? Because it takes away some of that anxiety. So I guess the last thing I'm going to do here, and then I got to be a little bit more timely with my exit today because there's a session right after mine, and I need to help set that up. But just remember, all of you, especially if you're a local here in Salinas, I know you all know where to find me. In fact, many of you know where my house is, which I'm totally okay with. And you could just throw something soft at my door and I'll maybe come out in my mask and we'll stand 6 feet apart and have a conversation. True story. I have rainbows in front of my house and people have stopped by. If you've seen them, I'm sure you know. So I want to show you here, because again, this is a work in progress. This is my coachben.org site. So for example, you can see my daily agenda is here. And so if you want to this is exactly my daily agenda. You can make a copy of it and you can change it the way you want it. This is all at Coach Ben and it's in the files and forms. You can also see the student completion log. I had to ask for some help as far as, because I got it tricky where the check marks actually count as a number. Right? So I had to get some help with that. So if you play with it too much, you might mess up some of those formulas, but it's nothing too. So those are some of the big things I showed you today. Even the star student template, it's just this, right? And I just put it in there and I just put the math I use. And if you just want to copy, you want to paste it, you need to change it. But at least here's some ideas. These are some things that you can start to do with some ideas. Do you need to do them all? No. Do you need to do any of them? No. But you need to be consistent with your messages, in my opinion. Yes. And you will need to condense the information that you're sending out. Remember, less is more. Send out one flyer, then 3 different messages if you have to. And so what we're going to do is I do have about 7 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up here on Facebook, and then I'll just give you guys a few chance if you have any questions. And then some of you might even be scooting over to the next section for me. So if you're on Facebook, thank you so much for watching and joining us. If you can also access this on YouTube, and I'm also going to stop the recording without stopping the share, right? I'm going to do this.